Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in 310-441-0555. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show or suggest topics or books for the program. And the shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Studio number 310-441-0555. So I had to do some book catch-up on Monday. I did the book from 2 weeks ago, and then so today I'll be doing the book from what would be last week's book, which is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. It's a very well-known book. Of course, Franz Kafka is one of the biggest writers of the 20th century, and this book is one of his very well-known ones because it has a lot of symbolism, as many of his writing does. There's so many translations to this book as I was looking up which one to get, and of course you're going to hear different people say which one is the best one. The one I have is a translation by Susan Bernofsky, which was, I think, done within the last 10 years or so. And so the book itself, The Metamorphosis, is about this man, Gregor Samsa, who wakes up one morning and he finds that he is a bug. That's how the book starts. And actually, talking about translation, this first sentence of the book is notoriously challenging to translate, or has been translated in many different ways. So the version I have is, when Gregor Samsa woke one morning from troubled dreams, he found himself transformed right there in his bed into some sort of monstrous insect. And so even that part, monstrous insect, sometimes it's vermin, sometimes that word monstrous is different. So you'll see that people have translated in different ways. And even I read some things about different people trying to determine what type of a insect or bug was it that Kafka meant. Was it a beetle? Was it a beetle that has wings that actually but never uses its wings in this book, which might have an interesting symbolism there, or what type of bug it was. So anyway, I think those things can be interesting to debate, but might not matter so much. And although this is a very, in a way, science fiction type of a way to start a book, that a man has been turned into some kind of bug, it doesn't feel like a science fiction book, and that's not really the main focus. Is how did someone, get some kind of superpower or change in some kind of way physically into this other being. It's much more than that. And so I think there's so many ways to look at this, and I'll share a bit about the plot. Of course, in a way, there's spoilers, but in a book like this, the plot is less significant than the interactions and the symbols and the themes that are woven throughout the book. But so Gregor Samsa is this young man, and he wakes up transformed into a bug, and so he's trying to understand what happened to him. So at first, of course, it's shocking, and he thinks it might wear off, or it's just some kind of feeling, or something like you wake up with pins and needles in your leg or something of that sort. But he sees he's not changing, and he's supposed to go to work. He's a traveling salesman, and so it creates all this commotion. And he lives with his mother, father, and sister. And of course, when they see him, they are shocked and appalled, and they can't believe what they're seeing. And then he learns that he can't talk. Early in the book, in my translation, he seems to somehow communicate a little bit with a few people, saying possibly a few words from his room. But anyway, later he sees he can't be understood or to speak. He can hear people and understand them. So in this way, he's still him, whatever that means. So issues of identity also come up in understanding what does it mean to be someone, or who is someone. And then we see that he is the breadwinner of the family, and is the person who provides for the family. And there's themes there that can also be explored, even related to capitalism and what happens to the individual. And so he's trying to survive, and the family doesn't know what to do with him. He lives in his room. They don't really let him out of the room. They're afraid to leave him home alone. It just obviously takes over their life. and it seems like he is in this state for a few months. It's really mainly his sister that does some type of taking care of him, bringing him food. First, she brings him milk, things that he liked, but he doesn't eat those things, and she brings many things, and eventually she starts to find the types of foods and things he likes, and so she brings him food. We see her interact with him, the most loving of the family members. We also see that there's a love that goes both ways, because he, along with taking care of the family, is saving money so that his sister, who plays the violin, can go to a conservatory to be trained as a violinist, as a musician. And so we see that there's this love, but of course he never gets to share this with her. He can no longer talk, and he says how he had planned around Christmas to share this news with her, that he was going to send her to the music conservatory, but he can't do that. So we see there's that mutual love there. The mother seems just unable to handle the whole thing. And at times we see her fainting often. The father has an angry reaction at times, and even at one point attacks him, throws an apple at him, which gets stuck in his back. And so it's very dark, very, of course, as you can imagine, if someone turns into a bug, it's not going to be a pleasant story. And so we see him trying to adjust to this new way of living, but there really isn't much. And over time, he feels that he's a burden on his family, and he actually sees that they might be more okay than he thought. It appears that his father, he thought, was only in debt, but has some money set aside, and then he starts to work, and all the family members start working, and it seems like they're doing okay without him. And at the end, he essentially seems to starve to death, or he doesn't have an appetite, and eventually he dies, and then the family moves on, and they seem to move on in a sense. There's obviously a sense of peace after this ordeal. They seem to be okay, and now just moving on with life. That's how the story ends. It's not a very long book. It's a novella. But so that's some of the themes, or as far as the plot goes, what happens. But again, it's more about the symbolism, which I likely will explore in more than one segment, because I don't think there's going to be one interpretation to this book. There's not just one way. He himself, Kafka, said he had some kind of a dream where he thought of this, and he wanted to write it actually quickly in 1 or 2 sittings. He completed it in about a month. He said it was a very bad type of a dream or experience, but he wrote it pretty quickly. And he also didn't want for there to be a bug or insect on the cover. He was very adamant about that, although interestingly, when I was looking to buy the book, I did find some versions of it where there was a insect or bug on the cover. Thankfully, the one I got didn't have one, although the words are written in a way that it could be the shapes of a bug itself. So there's not an actual bug, but there is really, in a way. I'm looking at it right now. And so he didn't want there to be a bug, which I thought of that as showing even more that it's symbolic. It's not this actual bug, or let's think what a bug is like, but some kind of this metamorphosis, this changing in some way. What does that mean? And so there is definitely this big theme of alienation, because we see that he becomes this bug, and this, of course, he's being othered in some way. Now he's not like us, even with his own family, and they put him in the room. They don't really show him much attention. They don't talk to him. He, I'm sure, wishes if they knew he could understand them, he wanted them to talk. At sometimes his sister does say a few words or phrases, but it's kind of like someone might say to a pet or to a plant, even just like some kind of comment, more out loud, but not really directly to them. And so he's very isolated and alienated. And so could that also just be a symbol of what human life experience can be like? He is this traveling salesman who is working extremely hard, traveling a lot, bad hours, not great conditions, just to try to take care of his family. So even his life itself is, in my view of how it was described, alienated already before he went through that. He was this isolated type of a thing, and he was basically producing, and this is what I said, that capitalism type of mindset, where he just became a productive cog in a machine and was making money for the family. And was that his metamorphosis in some way? Already he was losing his humanity, losing being that person that he is, or that we are at some core. And interestingly, once the family is doing okay financially or figuring out their ways and that they can survive without him, and of course he's not working, so he's not productive or contributing in the capital type of sense of bringing money for the family, he's no longer needed. And we see them at that point later in the book, after it's been a couple of months, it seems, that he's been in this state, ready to get rid of him. Even a big change is that his sister, who was the most loving to him throughout the book, even she is saying, let's get rid of it. Emphasis on that it, no longer him or my brother in some way. Now it's an it, and that is a big change from seeing him in that way. So we see this alienation, also the sense of being othered, that you're not us, you're not part of us. And I think that, of course, can extend to so many different ways that people or groups can be othered for many reasons. And so I thought that was interesting how there's a lot of ways to look at that. I've heard people talk about, when you look at people's interpretations, is did he have some kind of medical illness, terminal illness? I was thinking of even mental illness, the way he's othered and we can't communicate to him or with him, and so treating him like a thing over time rather than a human being. So that also came to my mind, this sense of treating him a certain way. But after the break, what I'll do is I'll explore some more themes about this book. I highly recommend it because it's a classic, very fascinating read, and a short read too. You can get through it pretty quickly. So after the break, I'll talk some more on this book, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. You can join the conversation about the book or ask any other questions, 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So continuing the discussion on the book, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. And so the themes of alienation, as I mentioned, are a very big one. And I think, as a lot of great art does, there's so much room for interpretation and personal interpretation, which will reflect some of our own leanings and biases and experiences and feelings and things that we project onto what's going on. As I mentioned, for me, the othered feeling that Gregor goes through after his metamorphosis into this bug can be seen in a lot of ways, including things like mental illness, or if you're no longer valuable in the ways that we unfortunately put value on things in our society. Making money a burden means that you are not making money and you cost something, but when you're producing, you are making money. So could it have been that he woke up and now he couldn't work, and so now he's this bug because he cannot contribute to the family anymore? And so we see him as this insect, but it's that because now he is just some kind of vermin or some type of a pain for the family rather than being something productive and good. Another interesting theme or element that comes up in the book is, and related to me in the sense of capitalism and even commercializing of things, is that earlier in the book we see that he has hung some picture of a woman, that it's from an advertisement, some beautiful woman dressed very elegantly, I think with like fur cuffs that cover her hands and arms. And later in the book, his family is trying to get rid of the furniture in his room. Actually, his sister in some ways thinks it might be good for him, so he has more room to crawl, but he actually doesn't want it because he likes having those things. But then he clings to this picture of this woman, which I thought was so interesting, that was the thing he did not want to part with. And of course, it could be also he's at an age where he's potentially looking for a wife, so there could be something there, the erotic or the romantic part of it. But I thought because of it being an advertisement and it's kind of this decadence in the picture, that could that also be this sense of how we cling to things and think that's going to give us value or make us good or make us feel whole or feel human in some ways, but it actually is so empty, and there's so much more. Related to that, though, where we see something with more depth, he is in his room and he tries to stay there as much as he can, and even tries to cover himself with blankets or sheets so that when people do come in, they don't have to see him because it scares them to see him. But there's one moment where his sister's playing violin, which, as I mentioned before, has significance because he loved that and wanted to send her to a conservatory so she could be trained in playing violin. And he actually takes the risk, almost out of his own control, of stepping out of the room or poking his head out of the room to hear and see it better, her playing the violin. And so is this some kind of a expression of how this creative, this artistic part of us, that's part of that human, that's what humanizes us, that's what makes us life valuable, what makes us valuable in some ways rather than the commercial or what are you producing. And so that he was willing to risk, of course, even at the beginning, financially wanted to give so that she can pursue that art. But then even here we see this moment of connection and the moment where we see him really enjoying something. He doesn't seem to enjoy much in his new state. Crawling at times where he gets to crawl on the ceiling, he enjoys a little bit, but really there's not much. But here we find this moment where he's so moved by her playing violin and wants to see it and hear it more closely, even risking poking his head out. And then not to get too much back into the story, but there's these three men that are staying with them. They are renting a room, the family now, probably to financially support themselves better or to take care of themselves. And then they see him, and then it becomes this whole scene because they're saying, why we wouldn't want to pay to stay somewhere where there's also this type of a guest or this type of individual or thing here. And so they say they won't pay, and it becomes a whole commotion. And that's even contributes further to this sense that the family is frustrated that he's hurting them in these ways and are willing to get rid of him or don't know what to do. And at this point, he's no longer, again, our brother or our son. He's it. And so there's something where he's been lost in the sense of being him. And again, could there be that because he's a financial burden? He's even now, not only is he not making money, but he's cost us this way of making more money because of how hideous he is. And so is it hideous to be a financial burden? Are we missing something that when we, in the way, see people as only beneficial in that way, do we already take away their humanity and take away who they are, what they are, when that's the focus? Because a lot of Kafka's work, you see this kind of sense of alienation or the struggles of being human in some way. So to me, that was an interesting theme, but we see that the art is something that's very meaningful and real. And I think, also in reading the book, hopefully none of you have woken up as an insect before, but you can probably relate to that feeling. I think everyone can in some way, of being othered or being shamed in some way. So for whatever it is, sometimes it's more of a stable trait about yourself, and some groups still get oppressed and treated a certain way where you might feel like you're othered so much. I think that's why, again, even as I say that, not putting a bug on the cover, it's a sense that it's not that it's a bug actually, because when we think of groups that get dehumanized, they aren't this thing, they're being treated that way. But I think everyone at some point can have this sense of being othered or not being sure they belong, feeling alienated or isolated in some way. For some reason, it reminds me of, there's a song by Radiohead. It's one of my favorite songs called Karma Police. And at the end, there's a part where Tom York, the lead singer, sings, "For a minute there, I lost myself." And it could mean a lot of things, but I feel like everyone could relate to that sense of losing themselves or not being sure who they are in some way. And in this sense, relating it to the book, this feeling of being othered in some way, or the threat of being othered. We maybe don't feel it so strongly, you might have not experienced it, but there is a sense that I have to be a certain way or else I'm going to be seen as different or less than or as a thing, not part of the mainstream society that I think is such a powerful experience for so many of us that we can have. Even if you don't realize it, we get socialized, and some of that can be good, learning good ways to live our life and to care for others and what makes us a good citizen in whatever society we are in. But with that can also come the sense that, do you have to lose yourself to be this good person, this good citizen, to be included? And is there a threat that you can lose that standing, which can be scary? So, seeing Gregor really one day wake up, and you also do get the sense that, yes, he one day wakes up and sees that he's an insect, but likely this transformation, this metamorphosis was happening for quite some time, which to me is also an interesting theme when we think of ourselves, of how we can change and wake up one day and feel that we're something new, someone new, and often in a bad way if we don't take steps in the right direction, or if we go in a wrong direction, you take small steps, all of a sudden you're far away from where you would want to be or where you'd like to be. So I think the metamorphosis being so sudden in this book, yes, it makes sense because that creates this image and this type of emotional reaction. But really, we all are constantly in a state of changing. We never stop changing. Even aging itself is a type of metamorphosis that we are going through, one that we have no control over, just like Gregor didn't in this sense. But there's a lot of ways that we go through different types of a metamorphosis that we do control, how we become who we become. And I think we can sometimes be afraid of what we have become. Interestingly, there's the show Breaking Bad, and the whole theme of that title, even Breaking Bad, is that at some point he went from being a good guy to a bad guy. Where was that point? And the reason why I also think it's interesting is there's an episode, I think, called Kafkaesque in the show. So it's kind of funny that theme came to my mind. Maybe there was some reason why it did. But anyway, coming back to this book, the central theme of being isolated and alienated from society to me is quite powerful. I think that's why it's a book that has stood the test of time, because people can always relate to that sense. No matter what society is at that time, there could be this fear or feeling of being alienated or isolated in that. And then also, as I was saying, there's themes in society that might take away our sense of humanity or promote them. And I think, to me, there was a lot of themes of the capitalistic mindset that takes away that humanity, this sense of what it means to be human, what is important about being human in our human experience. And so he was being a good, productive citizen by making money for the family, but maybe that didn't have so much value. And we can even say it didn't have as much value because, as I mentioned earlier, the family was doing more okay than he realized. He thought his father had lost all of his money and was just only in debt, but then soon sees that his father keeps taking money out of some kind of a safe and seems to have a bit of money, and they're selling some things that they have around the house, like jewelry and things, to survive, and then they all get jobs and they're doing okay. So in an interesting way, it almost devalues what he was doing, if that's what made him good, and maybe was not that valuable. So to me, that was also quite fascinating. And just to conclude talking about the book today, most of the books I read for the show, probably 90%, are nonfiction books. I do try to read at least several. I've read a few just recently, this one and another one in the last month or so. And often I remember feeling this way for a long time and hearing it, that people would say, well, who wants to read fiction? It's just stories, where it's about, nonfiction is where you learn facts and knowledge and things like that. And of course, I love reading nonfiction, so I enjoy that. But I think that there's so much you can gain from reading books of fiction, because it can teach us about life, about living in a different type of way. Even actually, when I see movies, sometimes you'll see a movie based on a true story or about someone's life. And I actually think it's frustrating because it's depicted as being the truth, but it's actually often not. So unfortunately, we see a lot of movies about, there's a movie coming out about Elvis's life. And I'm sure in that movie, there's going to be so many things they'll change about his life to make it more suitable for Hollywood, And to me, that's very frustrating because, then just say it's a story and then we kind of learn through it rather than pretending like it's real. And I'm also reminded of Albert Camus' quote, fiction is the lie through which we tell the truth. So fiction, it's a story, but through fiction, it's how we tell the truth. I think that's a wonderful quote. Fiction is the lie through which we tell the truth, Albert Camus. And so this is going back to the sense of what I've talked about when I describe books of fiction, is the plot doesn't matter that much. It matters, of course, because that's where the themes also come up. But what happened matters less than why it's happening or what that means. And I think when I was younger, especially, and I read fiction, in high school, and I think it's good to have high school students read fiction, but usually you're focused more just on the story. Oh, so what happened? Oh, he did this, she did this, and this happened, or this person kills this person, and that makes it interesting. But as you, I think, age, or I can speak for myself, get this sense that you can approach it in a different way, where there's themes and things you learn from it, that you actually learn a lot from life through these fictions, these fake stories, but they actually talk about real life, real human experience, and that can be quite powerful. And we always hear that great writers have a good hold of the human experience, or we can say at least some aspects of it that they express. Because what you feel when you read a book of fiction, even in this sense where there was some parts of it that are surreal, is that you want to get the sense that how the people are responding and reacting feels genuine. And so that's often what you see in bad fiction or bad movies or shows, is it feels fake. What we mean is that we don't think that the person would respond in that way or would feel this way. That doesn't make sense to us. But a good writer is going to capture that. And that's why actually, to me, the great writers were in some ways great psychologists, and maybe sociologists, and more than that, because they understood human experience, human interactions, could understand how people would respond. You even will hear writers talk about writing a book, and they create a character, and then they get surprised themselves by what the character does, because now when the character becomes his full person, there are things that they do or how they respond that they maybe could not predict until they created them and let them interact or see how they would respond. So I really enjoyed this book, and throughout the year you'll definitely hear me doing some fiction books. So when you give your recommendations, people tend to give me nonfiction books, which I appreciate, but I'm also open to hearing your books of fiction that you would recommend I read and discuss on this show. All right, let's go to another commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hi. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Doctor. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for your program.
My pleasure, thank you. Go ahead. What is your question for today?
Okay, I've got a question regarding my kids.
Okay.
Let me give you a just brief history of what had happened. I have two girls, one boy. The oldest one, he's 16, going to be almost 17. The middle one, she's 15, and the last one, the youngest one, she's 12. And what had happened, we used to live in California 5 years ago, and I moved to another state.
Okay.
Everything kind of was going well with them mentally, although there were issues in the family. But nonetheless, when we moved here, I think everything changed. Knowing they didn't like to move, they didn't adopt it even after 5 years. My oldest one completely isolated himself and didn't go to school, didn't want to do anything. My middle one struggled a lot, was bullied a lot, to the point that he had attempted kind of to commit suicide. But so after 5 years being here, what is going on right now, we seeking the therapies and everything, everybody is on board, psychiatrists and everything. But what I don't know what to do as of now is that I know I cannot undo anything. What can I do to make the life better for them to be able to live here? Because there's no way we can go back to California.
Okay.
But I am very regrettable and unhappy about my decision that I made to bring him here. But I don't know what to do. What would be the best approach to make it much easier, to make them not to love here, but to like it here, and carry on living their life, not to put a stop on it.
Well, there's several different things you're bringing up there. One is the last one about your own. You also mentioned your own guilt and regret you have, which is going to be significant and also impact how you interact with them. But you're saying how to make them happier or like being there. That's a big type of a question. It's not an easy one to just to fix, and where do we even begin with that? But tell me a little bit more about what's going on background as far as the family. Were there any other changes? Or is it a two-parent household? Give me more about the family background.
I've been married kind of happily per se. We had ups and downs, but we tried, and we got to the point right now we are doing much better, and everything is going well. Although, as I said, we had ups and downs and there are differences. Both of us are educated. I teach at the college and universities. I'm an MD, but I don't practice because I was diagnosed with MS, so that's why I couldn't practice as a physician. But we teach. We are in the academy. We are a part of faculty as of now.
Okay.
And basically, I'm the last child. My husband is kind of the fourth after 3 years. So we've both been out of the country for quite a while. He's been out of country since he was 16, and I also left Iran when I was 17, and I got my education partially in France and in U.S. So this is our background as a parent.
Now, okay, so there's two parents. I'm sure, of course, he's involved in what's going on too. But what I'm trying to get is what changed. I know you're saying the move, but I don't know if the move is what's causing all of this distress and all the challenges you're describing. And has anything else been going on, or how are things in general in the home, or is there anything else about the move that you can tell me that could have made it so impactful on your kids, if you think that's the cause of what you've been seeing them go through?
I think there is two kind of scenario. The move, it was basically it was the reason that I couldn't find a job in my field. Okay. That was the primary reason. And also, I think I needed kind of a change because, as I say, when I was diagnosed with MS, everything changed in my life. Also, I had to deal with my medical condition, also with my mental state, depression, was paranoid. So many things, comes with the MS, unfortunately. And depends on the area of your brain is being involved. You can have the personality issues, which my challenge was primarily was depressed, was paranoid, they kind of become a little bit suspicious of my husband. Those effects that probably caused them argue.
Paranoid about what with your husband?
I was become like paranoid in terms of become not trusting him, although he wasn't doing anything. But it was mainly part of the brain damage, the lesion that I had made me become paranoid also. So it wasn't like I want to do it. It was intentionally. But those probably led to this so many arguments that I had, and probably I caused those, which I personally, the guilt that I have, because kids are blaming me because I was delusional, I was sick, I was doing this and that. Okay. So that really is bothersome.
Yeah.
That's why we moved here. But probably the argument, what had happened, and also the shift in our life, is that like two parents being doctors and not being able to practice, was something that also they didn't like the idea of living different lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, so that's, I'm sure, well, and it's different lifestyle, but also they're seeing you. I mean, did you explain to them why you were no longer practicing? How much do they know about your MS and what you're going through?
Oh, from the day one, actually, I told them everything. They were like, as soon as I was diagnosed, I took them to the meeting, MS Society. They were participating in those meetings, and whatever was going on. So they were aware of everything, and I
Okay.
told them from the day one. And they could see the ambulance coming back and forth because I was really sick. So to the house to get me in and out. So they witnessed a lot of turmoil in the household regarding my medical condition and also my mental state.
Well, that's, and now we can see that it seems like the move is obviously it's a component, but I think these things you're bringing up are probably more significant in what's going on. And I know you're saying they get mad at you or they blame you, and especially as the parent, you might have to take some of that, not that it's all your fault, but to hear their anger and what they're going through. But this is what happens when we focus too much on blame, because, you weren't responsible for going through these medical and mental health issues that came up because of this illness. And of course, at the same time, maybe you could have done better somewhere, somehow, that's possible too. But blame is not going to get us very far. But if we understand it, this has been a huge stress and blow to the family, what you've gone through with your health. And of course, you experience it the most personally because it's your health, but especially for your kids and even your husband, it's having a big impact on them. And I can imagine there's more going on than just that. So I'm sure you've had to accept and acknowledge a lot of changes because of what you're going through with your health, but accepting that this is the reality of you and the family now will be important. And you can't likely go back to before your illness or, before these health issues. And you might have to accept that what is our new best possible type of life look like, but it might not be as it was before. And the more, you maybe have already, you can acknowledge your kids' pain in all this and what they've had to go through. So again, it's not about the blame that it's your fault that they're hurting, but that you can understand that this has been hard for them, seeing you, I'm assuming, lose some of your abilities physically or in whatever ways that has incapacitated you, seeing the fights that you and your husband had about what you were going through with the paranoia related to the lesions. So again, that wasn't your fault, but we can get that that's probably been very hurtful to them. So the more you can acknowledge that and the less guilt actually you have, the better you can acknowledge that. Because every time if they bring it up, it brings up all of your guilt. That's going to make it hard for you to be there for your kids with what they're going through because your own feelings are going to be coming up so strong. So I shared a lot there about different thoughts that I have on some of the things that you shared. But tell me a bit about what's it been like between you and your kids and talking about, you said they've been involved about what's been going on from the beginning, but about how it impacted you and how that impacted them.
Actually, to be honest, for me, I try not to let the MS take everything from me.
Mm-hmm.
I try to not to let it become a challenge. And thank God, despite of my very progressive stage of MS, I don't have any cognitive disabilities or any. My cognitive function is impaired. It's okay, and I'm functioning probably 100%, although with ache and agonies. You know what I mean? It's I'm functioning not at full capacity, but I don't look like an MS patient. That's the only thing that I have as of now. I don't know how far it's going to take me because of the severity of my illnesses, but I try to function as a normal person so my kids wouldn't be subject to any extra pain and agony seeing me disabled. So I do my best in that aspect. But I think what had happened mentally and the way I reacted to everything, and I was down, and probably the paranoia, the argument affected them also along the way, moving them here. Because I wanted a change. I know there was a different component to that move, because not finding a job that we wanted, and so many other things, but probably I needed a change. I needed to get away, but probably that wasn't a right decision to make at that time because they rooted there. They had their own friends. Everything was in place for them. So they blaming me for moving them here.
Okay.
So although I try to explain my reasoning, but they know that wasn't only reason. That was my thought process. That was the priority. That was what I was thinking. Not for me, not for them.
Yeah. And when they bring that up, I mean, I guess it doesn't feel good if they're blaming you. Again, that word or that type of feeling is very powerful, and it can get in the way of actually getting to some kind of resolution. But I hope you can understand their frustration and pain with it. And, you might explain just so they understand why, but it doesn't mean it didn't hurt them or it wasn't tough for them at the same time, no matter what the reasoning was. And they didn't want it, but they had to go through that. And so there's also this feeling I'm getting of this is a whole family dynamic. And so it might have been that moving was better for the family overall too, even though it wasn't ideal, but maybe that was the best thing. It's possible. But that still doesn't mean that the kids didn't take that in a way that hurt them or upset them. Now, what you've described, though, is it seems like there's a lot more going on than just, a mother has MS and that affects the kids. You're saying one of your children was suicidal. So there's more going on. And I also want to know more about you and your husband and how unified you feel through all this. So it's a huge challenge that you're going through. But the more unified you are, the more that can help. The less unified, or if there's conflict, then you just add stress to what you're going through. So we're at a commercial break, but I want us to continue afterwards, pursuing some of those types of lines of thinking. And of course, during the break, whatever comes to your mind that you haven't shared with me about what's going on, we can pick up there, okay?
No problem.
Okay, all right. Let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were with a caller. Let's go back to them now. Caller, are you still there? Hi.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So anything come to you during the break that you wanted to share?
I think what I did, I sat with them and kind of explained it to them that although we moved here, I cannot undo the past. I'm so sorry for you being hurt. And you've been subject to anything that you should go through. The changes must have been painful, and I acknowledge that.
Okay.
I can't undo the past. I'm so sorry. But I tried to change myself for better, mentally and physically, so it's not going to affect you any more agonies down the road. But I asked them what they want me to do to make it better for them. So although they had to go through a lot of challenges by themselves, that was my question. But it's still, they don't come on board with me. I don't think they accepted my apology. That guilt feeling is there always, and it's really bothersome. And just, I don't know, I always ask myself what I've done. I should have done this or would have done better. I'm kind of living in if would have been this way or would have been that way. I could have done this or could have done that. It's a turmoil for me, and it makes me really sad not seeing them upset or depressed. And I really don't know what else I can do to make it much easier.
Well, what we mentioned, sorry, I thought you were done there. I didn't mean to cut you off, but this sense that, like I was saying before, we can't go back to before your illness. And so the move seems to have been around that time in some ways, or when things maybe changed more. So there could be something about the move. It's not just about moving locations, which I'm sure was hard for them, but the sense that life has changed. And I know you're saying you try not to let it affect your show, but it seems like it does. I'm sure it does in a variety of ways. And that's something that you all will have to accept too, whatever ways it does affect you. But there could be this feeling of we wish we can go back to before this all started happening, that they might also be feeling. So it's not that I would suggest you tell them that's why you're upset. It's not about moving to remove that guilt, but that's just a thought. What do you think about that?
The change is actually for my daughter, that she fought for the last few years in order to fit in. They couldn't accept her. She was queen bee back in California and coming here, not having any friends, being treated as an outcast. That she was different. She was vocal. So she had to go through a lots of challenges through like almost 2 years until like last year she completely shattered and had that suicidal thought because she was trying so hard. She is a fighter and she's very vocal, but that differences made her a target at the school. She was bullied. She was continuously crying about the bullying, and teachers are not treating her well because she's different. She's from another state, or she doesn't participate in the certain religious event, or she doesn't believe for so many others believe that she didn't was content to kind of share with them. So it was hard for her. It was really, I know she tried, but she couldn't fit in. So there was a time that she crashed. I think she couldn't do it. But that really affected me. Put me in put back me to the square one with my mental health and my physical. So I had lots of flare-up at that time that she was sick also.
I'm sure.
So it was a difficult time, thank God, and with the help of therapists and everything, the people that are helping us, supporting us, we're getting through. But she's still struggling with the thought of staying here. She wants to go back. She wants to experience the high school back there. She continuously telling me that I've robbed her life, being able to experience the graduation, the prom back in California. So those thoughts is really heavy on my shoulder. It's kind of grating on my neck every day.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Sure. Well, and then, so tell me about your husband and your relationship with him, but then also how he's, in what ways he's involved with all of this.
In a way, probably most of the time we discuss what we wanted to do, but at the end of the day, it will be my decision. He doesn't disagree if I make a decision despite of his disagreement. So he always on board. Although down the road, if something happens, the blames come back to me. That was your decision. So
you mean he's
having him on board?
Yeah,
is good.
But you're saying he'll blame you too? He blames you? You're saying also?
Yeah, he blames me also.
Okay.
For the changes, because as I say, he's on board with me while we are discussing about things, the decision that we need to make. But at the end of the day, I make the final call. I'm the one who makes the final call. But if something goes wrong, he's coming back at me. Okay, you did that. You should have done that. That's why the kids are paying for that, especially the move. Although he agreed with it, and that was with the move, and he liked the idea, and he loves it here. Actually, he probably is the only one who loves it here. But at the end of the day, he's kind of agreeing with the kids. The move wasn't the right decision to make.
So what does he think you guys should have done?
He thinks that we should have stayed back in California, and I responded, kind of made it wrong decision emotionally, or not being in a good frame of mind while I might make my decision.
Well, I mean, do you think it was the wrong decision, or you think it was the right decision?
It's always, I don't know, if you look at it, financial gain or what I do right now, I love it. We both have a job that we want to do. We teach, and I enjoy it. But it's a good move in that aspect. But for the loss by gaining this status financially, I don't know, whatever you name it, but I think I lost my case in this game.
Okay. Well, even asking you now, as I asked it, I know we have to be careful because afterwards we see the result. It can be easy, hindsight is 20/20 to say you should have done this or you should have done that. Really, we have to go back to when you made the decision. But I was asking about you and your husband and how united you feel, and there seems to be there's some, but that when things go bad or the bad parts come up, then the blame gets on you. It's almost like it's the four of them against you in some way.
I call myself punching back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the sense I'm getting. At least your experience of it is that it becomes like the four of them against you. If things are good, it's good. But when it's bad, it's like, oh, see, that this is your fault that it's bad, rather than this sense that you're all going through it now together, 5 years down the line. There does seem to be this sense of it hasn't been accepted, like what these changes that have happened. Moving is very hard, and for kids and different ages. And so I don't want to undermine what your kids have gone through by saying this, but kids go through it. It does happen. And so each circumstance can be unique, but still it's something that many children do go through. But there's a sense that every day it's still being brought up as if it's like the decision is being made every day, like it hasn't been fully accepted as this is our life now, this is what we're doing, or let's make the best of it. There's almost the sense of every day, let's, bring up what we're going to do, So that's the feeling I'm getting from you, is that there hasn't been this acceptance of the move. And I also feel like it's an acceptance of what you're going through in some other way. And the move can be, yes, the kids have gone through some challenges, but life has changed a lot. I know you're saying you try to not have it limit you in a lot of ways, but I'm sure they've seen their mom change, in some ways, or they did see you go through that change, you're saying, even mentally, emotionally during that time. But there's a sense I get that a lot has changed.
Probably. But what I don't understand is that, as I said, the achievement, if you look at it, is huge. We gain a lot. But I wish that I could have kind of aligned with this achievement that we had here to just with my kids' happiness. I know I don't tell my kids, probably this change, moving from California to here, affected me more than anybody else in this family. It was a hinder to me because I don't discuss it as of now to make them worry, but it advanced 10 years. It progressed much faster. The last report I had, it was like it really is progressing very fast because of all the turmoil and the stress that I'm going through, which is the number one killer in my case, is worsening my situation. But I don't want to let them know what's going on by putting on more stress. Is not going to be beneficial for none of us, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's going to be subsequently wheelchair bound or paralyzed or anything else, or losing my cognitive function. This is what I'm dealing with right now. I know what's going on. I know I'm aware of all the changes, but at the same time, I don't want to be that changes to me to be kind of an add-on to the frustration and stress.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, as a parent, you don't want to say to your kids, what you're going through has made me, hurt me more than it hurt you, or even has hurt me a lot, and emphasize that, if your child is struggling. But, your husband is, it's a different dynamic than with your kids. How is he about, do you feel like he understands your pain or the struggles that you've gone through?
He does. He's kind of trying. He was against me sharing my MS with the kids from day one. He didn't like the idea, but I thought that would be the best of interest for them to know what I'm going to do. I don't want them to be like all of a sudden subject to seeing me in the wheelchair and asking what had happened. And I told him I got it. And I said, "What, you haven't told us that?" So I discussed that issue. But right, and as of now, he is supportive by letting him know that the changes, I know you guys went through, he's trying to make it clear for them this is our life as of now, and try to make the best out of it. And if the things happen, you never know what tomorrow is holding for you. So he's on board with them to support them. Yes, he's acknowledging that mom made a decision. That's fine, although it might have been that she did something wrong per se, but it was in your best of interest at that time. It was circumstantial, the decision. It wasn't based like we want to hear you and move you.
Yeah. But do you feel like he, that's with the kids, with you and him, how do you feel as far as being supported, or how he, helps you or makes you feel about what's going on?
He's very supportive. As
Okay.
I said, unfortunately, some lesion in a different area, frontal lobe, or some other part of my brain can cause having me be paranoid, as I said, or
Does that still happens, or that was just that time?
It does.
Okay.
As I say, I can't do anything about it because there are lesions in certain area that cause paranoid. I can not be able to assess the situation and not to get rid of that negative thought. And depression is a part of it. But I'm continuously battling with that idea and not try to think about anything and let it to occupy all the space that I have in my brain. But sometimes it's really bothersome. But he's trying his best not to let that thought and get worse. Although sometimes out of control, and it may frustrated, by my thought and by my anger or things that it doesn't seems right to me.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I could see how that affects the relationship, but you've mentioned that how you're being affected. I still, the thing I'm feeling from you a lot is the sense that the decision hasn't been fully accepted, and I feel like even some of what you're going through has not been fully accepted, I think, by you as well, of how it's affecting you. And so this sense that the family's almost every, I know you're bringing up these stories, I doubt it's literally every day, talking about going back or why did we move. It's kind of like, it reminds you of when people came from Iran and there was a sense we're about to go back, so they wouldn't want to settle in here and feel like this is home. So there's a sense of like we might be going back, or they almost don't want to enjoy it. And so you don't want to undermine what they're going through and saying, well, you have to accept it and make life good here. But there is some of that of, okay, if we're living here, if moving back isn't really an option, how do we make our lives better here? Which is what you were asking me. How do you do that? But there's a sense of doing that all together that, from what I'm hearing from you, it's a sense of this, the move being a mistake, or why did we do it? It's constantly there rather than it's been accepted and now trying to make the best of life where you are. Or is there a realistic chance of moving back, or does this get brought up as something that could happen?
At one point, I told them if I find a position that we can support, pays well, I don't see any reason we cannot go back. But as of now, it's not feasible. There's no way for us. There's no way for us to be able to go back. Mm-hmm. But I gave them the option that I am not kind of stuck here. I can move, but for you guys, but it has to be something that is feasible. We can financially to support ourselves, which is not the case right now.
So financially, you would not be able to support yourself just on your husband's income?
I mean, for me to move back to California?
No, I'm just wondering, when you say financially it's not feasible, so you're saying if you are not working, your family would not be able to...
No, well, I was talking about if the kids were asking why we don't go back.
Right.
And I told them, no, we can. But both of us are working here. We don't have any work. We have to apply. If if they hire me, that's fine. We go back. But right now, it's not feasible. That's not the case for us to go back to California. As of now, for me, to cut the cord and let them know that it's not working for us to be able to go back. We purchased a house. I tried to just let them do whatever they like to do in the new house, change the environment, give them more stability. So that was what I tried to do. Yes,
but,
both of us were working as a faculty. That's fine. Financially, if I love to work, and I do it most of the time online, so I don't need to come here. But yes, we can. But I love to do it. It's not just something financially related.
So it's not just the financial. Yeah. But, this sense of you want them to settle in there or enjoy their life there. That's the feeling I get, is that there's, even though it's 5 years, accepting that this is home seems like it's not there. And then it comes back to it's your fault that we're here, rather than how do we make a home here. So I don't feel the sense of all 5 of you working to make a new family life there, even though it's not even that new. It's been 5 years. And that's what I mean, that I keep getting the sense that accepting the reality of your situation, both your health and what's going on, and that this is where we're living, seems to not be there. And so there isn't this making things the best they can be where we are, because it's constantly, I shouldn't be here, or my life's not good because of this decision, rather than how can we make life good. That's why I was wondering, your husband, now, and then you're saying when things get bad, he might come back and you're the punching bag. But that's something for you to also be aware of. Are you allowing yourself, not to blame you if you're being the punching bag, but do you explain to them that, or especially to your husband, that we have to accept the situation, even though, yes, maybe it was more for my work, but this is what we did as a family, not just it's about me. I keep feeling that you're the one that's getting all the blame.
Yeah, but actually we do. He explained it also, and I also explained to everybody this. I did not make that decision willingly to just change it, have changes for myself. I did it to have a change that impacted everybody else.
Yeah.
And it might have turned out differently for you guys, and it wasn't intentionally. I did it.
So let's come back. I'm looking at the time. Actually, I should have went to a break a couple of minutes ago. What is it that you are trying to figure out right now? You're asking me, how can you make their life better? What does that even mean to you, make their life better?
It's just to come to acceptance, to that stage of acceptance.
Yeah.
How can I make it easier for them? This is the part that if they come to agree and accept it, so everything falls in part. The puzzle is kind of done.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. I feel like that's and it could be your guilt also is playing a part in this, that you're not wanting it to be that, this is our reality. It's almost like you're possibly giving them the sense that we might go back more than should be the best approach. So because you feel so bad that they're so unhappy here, you might not want to accept that this is what has been created. So it's like, well, maybe we will, or it could happen. Not that you're saying it could happen, but like I said, for me, there's a lot of things that feel up in the air. And so you and your husband might have to establish more, if like, this is our life. How can we make our life the best that we can here? As a family, individually, what do we all have to do to make that for ourselves better and for the whole family? But the sense I get from you is that it's just so not accepted, that it's just, I know it's probably on your mind a lot. It might not be every day it's brought up, but the sense that it's constantly on everyone's minds. So I think that acceptance, you'll have to accept it yourself, including your health condition and however it's affecting you. But your husband will also have to be on board with you, like, okay, this is our home, guys. How do we make this home work for all of us? How do we make this the best for all of us?
Okay. I will try my best.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, good luck. It's not going to be easy, but I think this the blame is not going to get us very far, and you're not the one that's doing most of it, but you have to make sure you also resolve your own guilt and forgive yourself for it. Not that it means you undermine the pain your kids are going through, but to not blame yourself, because that's going to make it harder for you. But wish you the best with that and to your whole family.
Okay, thank you so very much for your time, Doctor.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
So nice talking to you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With the previous caller, I mentioned the concept of blame several times, so I want to speak a few minutes on that topic right now. And we are very easily drawn to this idea of blame. When you get hurt or upset by something, we quickly like to think of whose fault it is that caused that. And it's actually, we like to have a target for our anger. So something hurts us, we want to know who hurt us. Even you see this sometimes, something will happen and it's not the person's fault that ended up causing the pain. Let's say someone pushed you to push into them. You might push the person that ended up hitting you, even if someone else caused the pain or caused the reaction. Or, lots of cultures do this, but I see a lot of Persian parents, if the kid hits their head or leg against the wall, they go hit the wall, right? We like to have a reason to blame, oh, this bad wall hurt you, because it feels good to be able to put it on someone or have some target of that, because that's what we experience. On Monday, I was talking about compassion when we have this bad feeling when someone else is suffering. With anger, we feel like we've been wronged by someone in some way, and it feels good to, in that moment, get it out on that person and let them know, or person, thing, whatever it might be. So when we have disagreements, when we have issues that come up, blame tends to be the way we focus on things, and also as relates to things like our legal system, who's guilty or who's innocent, who's more right or wrong. And unfortunately, even in our family or marital relationships and interactions, we bring this same theme. And I've sometimes joked that when I do couples therapy, especially the first session, I feel like I should walk in or join the session wearing a judge's robe, because it feels like the couple has come in and wants me to tell them who's the better husband or wife, or who's the good or bad partner in this relationship, who's winning and losing. And so, yes, there has to be this airing of grievances in ways that both people have been hurt. But what I always remind them is that if you want your relationship to get better, rather than pointing the finger at each other, you have to point the finger back at yourself to say, what can I do better to make this relationship better? What have I done that has caused these problems first? And what can I do better to make things better in this relationship, rather than just pointing the finger at the other person? And so rather than focusing on blame, and I can't remember the authors, those three authors, it was from a few years ago, the book Difficult Conversations. And to me, this concept of contribution in a disagreement versus blame was very significant. Because when we focus on blame, that tends to be about judgment, who's good and bad, who's right or wrong, and it stays in the past. So who was wrong here? You were wrong. Oh, I win, you were bad. And that's it. But we don't really actually make things better. And if you're in interaction with someone and you focus on blame, even if you're, let's say, right in that way and you win the argument, you might feel good for a moment, but your partner doesn't feel very good, and it doesn't lead to making things better. But that tends to be our default. So we'll have to resist that tendency to go towards blaming and seeing who's more right or who was more wrong, and focus instead on contribution. So contribution means we both look at, how did I contribute to this disagreement, this conflict, whatever it might be. And I know in an overly simplified way, we can make it seem like it's always going to be 50-50. Of course not, but not even getting so focused on that part, because that goes back to blame, but try to understand, what have I contributed to this problem? And we usually have a harder time finding that. It's very easy for us to say, oh, this person did this to me, they were so wrong. We're biased in so many ways to our own story, our own feelings, our own experience, that we're going to go there. But we can recognize that virtually in any type of disagreement, especially in a relationship, there's going to be something you contributed. A common case where people say, well, no, I didn't actually this time, is they say, well, look, this person kept hurting me in some way. And actually what we tend to see in those situations, that your contribution wasn't that you hurt them because you weren't doing anything, but that was the problem. You weren't doing anything. So the first time they hurt you or upset you, you didn't say anything, didn't bring it up, didn't let the person or your partner know. And so that issue or situation built up and festered resentment in you and kept being an issue. And so part of that responsibility from your end, your contribution, was that you did not bring up the issue earlier. So what we want to focus on is, okay, what did I do bad or wrong here that I can recognize and acknowledge and share with the other person, whether it's your partner, friend, business associate, whoever it might be. And this allows us, rather than focusing on the past and on judgment, to focusing on the present, on what we can do better. Okay, so this is what happened, and so what can we learn from this going forward? The winner is not going to be me or you. The winner could be us together. We learned something about what happened. We learned something about what we both did. If both people acknowledge how they contributed to it, that tends to make the other person feel good. Okay, I can say at least you're acknowledging what you did, so I don't have to feel this stress or pressure to convince you that you did something wrong, right? Because if we got hurt by someone or hurt by some experience and we feel like the other person doesn't even understand what they did, that's a very scary feeling, because now I feel like, well, how do I know you even will not do this again? You don't even get what you did this time. But if you show me, you know what, I did this, and I think that was not good, and I can do that better, or I can do that differently next time, that can give you a sense of relief that they know and they can possibly change that, rather than they don't even think it was bad, right? If someone punches you in the arm and it hurts and they say, I didn't even do anything, well, now you're afraid to be around them because you feel that they can hurt you and think it's totally okay and not even realize what they're doing. But if someone says, oh, that was horrible, I'm really sorry I did that, I don't want to do that anymore, that was my contribution to this fight or this pain, then you can feel better that hopefully they at least know what's there to change it. So that's a shift that can be very important, to move away from blame and proving who's right or wrong, and to focus more on contribution. How have we both contributed, and each individual reflecting, how did I contribute to this conflict that we are now experiencing, or we experienced? And then through that, rather than focusing on the judgment and the blame of the past, focus on what happened and how we can move forward, focusing on that contribution. So shifting from blame to contribution can be a very powerful step and shift in improving our conflict resolution and allowing us to, rather than winning against each other, win together. All right, let's go to our last commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So to end the show today, on my story on Instagram, I had posted something or shared something from School on Wheels, which is an organization in Los Angeles that provides tutoring and educational academic support to children and families experiencing homelessness in the Los Angeles area. But it was related to LGBTQ plus youth, and it says that it's a statistic that up to 40% of the total youth experiencing homelessness are from the LGBTQ community. And so, and I posted that when people ask why Pride matters, this is why. And so June is LGBTQ plus IA Awareness Month, or Pride Month. And, you know, it's one of those things where we have these days or months that are commemorating something, or we focus on something, which is good because it's bringing attention to something. But of course, it's one of those things that it's not just for 1 month out of the year or 1 day out of the year, whatever the type of thing that we're talking about is. We want to focus on it. And I think this is most strongly exemplified in the commercialization of anything that happens really in the world. But we see that, you know, there's every logo. If you go online, so many companies, corporations change their logo to include the rainbow flag, or the logo becomes a rainbow, or somehow there's a rainbow in it saying we're in solidarity, which in a way can be nice, but often it's a type of virtue signaling where really there's no genuine feeling. It's just that you have to do that to show that you're good, or you're okay, or woke, or whatever it might be. You're trying to signal something more than it's coming from a genuine place. But so we have these types of, you know, months or experiences of days that we have, and even there's a Pride parade and things. I don't know if it's this weekend or next weekend coming up in Los Angeles and in different cities where people experience things. And one of the things I've heard people say before is, oh, pride, like, why should you have pride about your sexual orientation? That's something to be proud of. And so what I think is important, why I wrote that way, and you'll see a lot of posts and messages with this same theme, is that the reason why pride exists, or even it's expressed in that way, is that when you've made to feel something about you should be hidden, and worse than just be hidden, that it makes you immoral or bad, or even as a psychologist acknowledging that for so many years it was considered a mental illness to be homosexual. But to be immoral, you couldn't be trusted, you couldn't be in the military in the United States. The Deviant's War by Eric Cervini, a couple of years ago I read, which was really powerful on that theme of serving in the military as a homosexual. And so when we see that you've been treated a certain way and been made to feel bad and even experienced discrimination in various ways, even bullying and worsen things that are, violence and things of that nature, when you are embracing and understanding that you never had something to feel bad about in the first place, it can make sense that you'll respond with what is pride, of showing that, of wanting to be not afraid. So it's an expression of not having to be afraid of something that for so long you have had to be made afraid of or to feel afraid of, and still do. So it's not that when people have pride now and they're discussing their sexual orientation or not being heterosexual openly, that they feel comfortable completely and never face anything negative. No, it still can be challenging, especially depending on where you live. So I know many of the listeners, especially when you're listening live, are Iranian. Imagine if you moved somewhere, or even here, let's say if you're in the United States and you're told that it's bad to be Iranian and you're put down for being Iranian and ridiculed, and of course some of these things did happen. But imagine if it was even more systematic and constantly you were feeling these things still, where you had to hide that you were Iranian because you could get beat up or hurt in some way, or not allowed to be Iranian and been told that you were less than or worse or immoral or all sorts of things for being Iranian. And then slowly it became more okay, or people were giving you solidarity that you can accept that. I could imagine a lot more people would want to wear an Iranian flag or wear it on themselves or the colors or something of that sort, because they have been felt that this was something that's to be ashamed of or put away, and now they can express and not have to feel bad about. So recognize that I think sometimes people, because when we talk about LGBTQ issues, it also involves, of course, sex and sexuality, and that has certain connotations it brings up for us just morally, that it's even wrong to think about those things or to focus on those things. It can make people think that it's about having sex or wanting to have sex or experience those things that makes people have pride, but it's about this sense of being who you are and having that identity and having it be okay, having it be accepted. So if people were never oppressed in the first place, there would be no need for this type of pride that people express. It's from that oppression that it comes from. It's a reaction to that or a response to that over time, that it's not something that needs to be hidden. And so, as I discussed in the first segments of the book, of the show, the book The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, and there was this sense of alienation and of being dehumanized also, we can see this sense of dehumanization. And that's why I think that not putting a bug on the cover as he wanted is a sense that it's not to say there's a direct link there, but that the sense of being felt to being made to feel like you're an other in some way, that you're no longer human. And we've seen that throughout history. And so anytime we put a group of people down, and it's something to recognize, or even if you bully an individual, it's not from their weakness that you would disrespect or dehumanize or treat them poorly. It's from your weakness that you do that. If you're cursing at someone, if you're physically assaulting someone, we tend to think, and it can make us feel strong, but it's coming from our own weakness that we do these things. And so if you have certain feelings, and usually when I post something about different things, but especially the LGBTQ community, I get mostly almost overwhelmingly positive messages and responses, but sometimes I'll get some more negative or ones that are more questioning of it in a sense of, well, is this good or is this something to support? And the reason why I talk about these issues often is because of things like that, where the rates of homelessness for youth in the United States even is higher for members of the LGBTQ community. Often they are treated poorly by their own families or not accepted by them, or face different types of discrimination within their own family or whatever else they go through outside of the family that contributes to that. Rates of suicide tend to be higher. So it's not just this, it's good, it's nice type of a thing. We're talking about literal life and death here. It's not just that it should be good to make them feel more okay. We're talking about this sense that some people are more likely to take their lives because of how they get treated in society. And I've shared this statistic before, but this was in the United States, the findings that when states legalized gay marriage, there was a decrease in those states of suicide in LGBTQ teenagers and individuals. And so this is why I'm saying, connecting to this book, the sense of being othered or being made to feel like you don't belong in some way, or you don't have the same rights as everyone else, can make you feel like you maybe should not exist, that maybe you're a burden, maybe you should not be yourself and who you are. And that's something that I think we should take very, very seriously, of how we approach one another and how we treat one another. Being a psychologist, I am very lucky to be let into people's worlds emotionally and what they go through. And I've seen, it's not just in our culture, so you see it across the world, but unfortunately, working with Iranian families and individuals, seeing how people treat their own even family members at times because of how they were born or who they are, that somehow they shouldn't be loved as much or even accepted in some ways, or accepted fully. And acceptance itself is on a spectrum. Sometimes people say, well, we accept our son, but we don't want to ever meet anyone he's dating, if he's gay, let's say. Or we'll never have him at the house. Or if other people are there, well, of course we can't, because how will that look to people? And so that's not acceptance. Acceptance means I accept all of you, not I accept part of you, or I would accept you differently if you were, let's say, straight. Of course, you could bring your girlfriend over, but not your boyfriend. So recognizing the ways that we are harming one another for reasons that are not anything to do with how we should be treating them, how people were born, who they are. And I often have mentioned this thought of, well, what do we think in the future people will look at and laugh at us, as we always do, in a way that you could look in the past, and I mean laugh as in like you can't believe that people did these things or believed these things. And I'm very confident that this is one of those issues, that who someone is attracted to or who they want to be with being a reason to treat them poorly, to me, is something that's unexplainable, that won't be something that, even still, of course, we're moving in that direction and many people see that, but more and more that will be the case, that it's the wrong thing, and what were we doing? And of course, it'll be tragic. So when I say laugh at it, doesn't mean, it's just funny, but it's laughable, the type of thinking and logic to treat people poorly because of that. If you're listening right now, you don't know who I like or who I'm with or what I'm doing. I hope you just listen to what I'm saying, and that's what's going to matter, and shouldn't mean that you would treat me one way or the other because of whatever else it is going on. What difference should it make if you're interacting with someone, who they want to date or be with or not be with, or whatever it might be? But it can become such a big issue. And we also have to be careful, because sometimes things that give us such a strong, what feels like automatic and is automatic emotional reaction, it can make us think it's something significant. And so this is where I think it's always so hard to tease apart, well, what is like a human nature, or what is part of our nature and instinctual, and what is cultural, and what have we learned? And it's always going to be hard to find some line of what that is for any type of issue. But what can happen is that things that we get enculturated in from a very young age feels so automatic and real that we think it totally is real just as it is. And I think money is a great example of that. When you see money or hear money, or someone made money, lost money, automatically you have a reaction, such a quick, strong one for most people, which makes us think money is such a real thing. And of course, it's what it's related to, and it connotes for us about safety and security, and also status and whatever else. But itself, money has value because of how we value it. But I can show you dollar bills, and depending on where you're from, that money will have more value to you, but it feels very natural. But if I show you money from another country and you can't tell it's the currency of some place, or it doesn't have any value to you, you won't feel anything. Whereas for someone else, it'll feel so instinctual. So coming back to this, sense of, if you feel something, no, this is just naturally right or wrong, or this has to be this way, recognize that a lot of things that you think are just natural or have to be a certain way, it's more about the ways you were brought up and what you've heard. In my lifetime, I've seen such a shift in people's reaction to something like gay marriage in the United States. It hasn't changed itself. Our feelings about it have changed. Seeing the public consensus change has changed our minds. We all like to think we think for ourselves and no one affects what I think and I'm such a rational thinker. We are all affected by emotion. We are all affected by the opinions and thoughts and feelings of people around us. It's something we have to accept. But also we want to accept that what feels so right to us, it doesn't mean that it's right. It's that it feels right because of what you've been told matters. And sometimes if you look at your life, you'll look back and think, wow, I can't believe this was true, or this was the right way to be, or the only way to be. And I hope that if you have some feelings or thoughts about members of the LGBTQ community, or you're not sure about it, you can recognize that you've been told from a young age that something about it was wrong or not okay, or even worse words than that. But human beings deserve human rights and human respect and love. And you want to make sure that any individual you are not giving that to, it's showing something less about you rather than them. So I hope we can promote more and more tolerance, but more than tolerance, acceptance and love, and to be an agent for that type of change, which starts, of course, from all of us within ourselves, but then how we talk about and interact with all people and what we can do to make that positive change. I hope we can all do that, and I strive to do that myself. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you to Baptiste here in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful week.